Hey guys, it's Paradise, and it's rare for a game to catch us off guard, but after spending over 40 hours with Where Winds Meet, we can confidently say it's not what we expected. Over the past few weeks, we've had early access to the beta, diving deep into its single-player campaign, testing out the martial arts combat system, and even exploring the lesser-known online modes. So in this video, we're going to break down our hands-on experience with Where Winds Meet, going through what works and what doesn't. Firstly, for those that haven't seen it before, Where Winds Meet is an open-world action RPG set in a reimagined version of China's late Ten Kingdoms period. The story lets you play as a mysterious swordsman or woman caught between political turmoil, ancient martial arts traditions, and supernatural forces. The unique thing about Where Winds Meet is what it's going for, as the game blends together fast-paced wuxia-style combat with open-world exploration. You can run across water, scale cliffs, and chain together flashy attacks using different schools of martial arts. Something that you may not initially know about the game on first impressions though, is that it's not just a single player experience. There's a full co-op system, PvP, dynamic world events, and even social life elements like professions and housing. The devs themselves actually describe it as a sandbox-style adventure where you're free to follow the main story or carve your own path, whether that is becoming a wandering hero, a bounty hunter, a healer, or even a merchant. And that's one of the biggest surprises with Where Winds Meet, which is just how many ways there are to actually play the game, as it's not your typical action RPG setup. We'll start by talking about the single player because honestly, it's way more varied and chaotic than we expected. There is a full story-driven experience here with quests, voiced characters, open world exploration, and cinematic cutscenes. But what really stood out is how quickly the game shifts gears. One moment you're galloping through a burning village during a dramatic horseback escape, and the next you're tossing a wild bear off a cliff or squaring up in a martial arts tournament. It honestly keeps things moving, and that unpredictability makes it hard to put down. It's one of those games where you're constantly experiencing something different. The boss fights were a real highlight as well. They have weight and intensity that reminds us of something like Wo Long, and they actually feel skill-based with mechanics that force you to engage properly instead of just mashing buttons. The single-player missions offer a more linear path that you can follow if you want to, and will put you in several different missions where you can learn new skills, martial arts, and level up your character. As mentioned, there is fully voice-acted cutscenes, which helps give the story some punch, but right now it is only in Chinese. This might be fine for some, but we did find it a bit disappointing that there's no English voiceover option, especially since the game clearly wants to reach a global audience. Still, the storytelling is solid, just not groundbreaking, although the real weak spot is the animations. It gets the job done, but it's definitely on the stiffer side in places. We'll talk about this a bit more when we go over the polish and visuals later on, but also note the single player isn't the only core mode in the game. So let's talk about co-op, because Where Winds Meet really opens up in ways that other RPGs don't. You can invite your friends to your world and tackle a huge chunk of the game together. Side stories, open world missions, world bosses, and even the crazy minigames. Pretty much everything outside of the main story missions is playable in co-op, and your character progression carries over. What's especially cool is the side stories. Even though they aren't single-player missions, they aren't just filler, as often they're just as in-depth as the main story single-player missions, complete with their own cutscenes, voice acting, and objectives. Some of them also unlock new skills, stances, or moves, which adds some real depth to your build, meaning it's a great incentive to dive into this content with your friends instead of just going solo. That said, the co-op system does take a bit of getting used to. It runs on a shared world structure, which can be quite confusing at first. For example, we played through an entire side story before realizing you need to manually sync progress in the menus, otherwise only the host will get the credit. It's one of those easy to miss mechanics that makes the co-op feel a little unpolished for anyone that isn't the host. On top of this, there are moments where invitees cannot interact with certain objects or trigger events, which can break the flow a bit. So while playing with a friend is definitely fun, it is not the most seamless experience yet. Still, co-op is where the game's most enjoyable moments can happen. Whether you're tag teaming through a tough world boss or messing around with minigames, it's a great way to explore the world together while building out your character, and very surprisingly, it is introduced in the game almost from the outset. And just to be clear, because there is some confusion about it, co-op is not the same as the online mode. That's a whole separate system layered on top that we'll get into next. So unlike the single player and co-op content which opens up pretty early on, the online mode unlocks once you hit level 10. After that, you can switch over at any time through the pause menu, which loads you into a shared world where you can freely encounter other players. It's basically an MMO-light experience layered on top of the main game. You are still in the same world, doing quests and exploring, but now there's other players running around, random events happening, and access to a bunch of PvP and multiplayer-focused content. While testing it, we even ran into someone that watches the channel here, which was kind of surreal. Now, the matchmaking wasn't perfect during our test, as we did have moments where we struggled to find other players in certain activities, but we did get to try something called a joint strike. This is essentially a co-op dungeon run. You work through multiple levels of enemies, completing smaller objectives and sometimes fighting a boss. At the end of each level, there's a reward chest where you can spend gathered resources to roll for high-level loot. It's a fun, fast-paced mode that feels like a nice break from the open-world roaming. Beyond that, we know the online mode is packed with content, as there is 1v1 and 2v2 duels, team-based PvP modes, large-scale faction wars, and even a full-blown battle royale mode, which is kind of insane. We didn't get to try everything, but the sheer number of modes is actually impressive for a game that's also doing story-driven RPG content. There is also supposedly a housing system tucked into this mode, which lets you own and decorate your own space, similar to what you would find in other MMOs. We didn't get to test this ourselves during the beta though, but it's something we're definitely curious to check out when it is fully live. What makes the online mode so wild is how much content is crammed into it. It's not just tacked on multiplayer, it actually feels like a game inside a game, and while many of the systems do need smoothing out, especially the matchmaking, there is a lot of potential here if the servers can hold up. One of the things that a lot of people are interested in knowing more about though is the combat system and the core gameplay. Where Winds Meet features a traditional action combat style system, which is similar to other character action RPGs. At the start of the game, you're taught the basics early. You have light attacks, heavy attacks, charged attacks, parries, and dodges. But the real depth emerges with the defensive system. Red attacks must be parried, while gold and black attacks must be dodged. This means reading enemy cues becomes essential, giving fights a more tactical feel, kind of a bit like Elden Ring or Wo Long. One of the things that really adds depth to the combat though is the different weapons you can pick from. There's 7 distinct different weapon types in the game. Straight swords, which is like your standard sword, a fast and versatile classic. Dual blades, which is a bit more aggressive, with high speed offense, so think of Monster Hunter dual blades. Then you have spears or glaives, which are longer reaching with a bit of crowd control, and this is one of our favorites. There's also heavy swords if you want something a bit slower with more impactful strikes that can break guards. There's fists or unarmed combat for more close range grappling brawler style gameplay. There's even fans that are a support tool for buffs and healing, and the umbrella, which has ranged magic style attacks with aerial utility. Out of all of these weapons, you can equip 2 different types simultaneously and swap mid-fight seamlessly, making it easy to adapt to different combat styles based on the enemy. On top of the weapons, each one has its own built-in skills, ranging from offensive combos to moves and defensive tools. Then you have the Mystic Arts layer on top, which are powerful abilities you unlock as you explore the world. So whether they deal big burst damage, buff your character, debuff enemies, reposition you, the arts can be woven into your combat for maximum impact. And remember, since you're mixing in parries, reading enemy attack colors, and switching weapons or weaving in arts, the system clicks together and gives you something that feels really responsive, flashy, and satisfying when all of it comes together. The character progression is another strong suit, because you're not just locked into one class or build, instead you unlock different schools of martial arts, stances, and passive upgrades as you play. You can spec your skills and experiment freely, which makes it easier to find a style that suits you. There's side quests, world events, and even co-op missions that will unlock new abilities, skills, or combat techniques, so exploring the world really does feel rewarding. There is also your actual gear progression itself, which is tied to world bosses, chests, and multiplayer modes like the joint strikes we mentioned earlier. Your gear itself has stats, slots, and even visual changes, so there's plenty of room for min-maxing if that is your thing. Some of the skills and abilities you unlock in the game get pretty crazy too, with some of them even allowing you to basically fly across the entire world. It's one of those systems where the more you engage with the game's different modes, the more your character grows, and that's always a good loop to have. Visually, Where Winds Meet is a bit of a mixed bag. There are moments where the game looks genuinely impressive with sweeping landscapes, dynamic weather, and beautifully lit environments. Then there are other times where textures, NPC animations, or environmental details just fall flat. Overall, the graphics is serviceable and they get the job done, but it's not pushing the bar visually like some of the other bigger AAA titles out there. What does stand out though is the music. The soundtrack is fantastic, blending traditional Chinese instruments with sweeping orchestral elements that really elevate the experience. Whether you are exploring peacefully or fighting a boss, the music always feels well paced and helps really sell the atmosphere. It's one of the areas where this game consistently delivers. Now, Where Winds Meet does also give you a solid amount of control over how your character looks and plays. Right from the start, there is a very detailed character creator that lets you tweak facial features, body shape, hair, and more. As you play, you unlock a wide range of cosmetic outfits, weapon skins, and mount styles. Some of these are earned through quests or events, while others show up in the cash shop, which we'll cover in a moment. The outfits do look great, and they really lean into the wuxia fantasy vibe, with flowing robes, battle-ready armor, and some more flashy fashion choices too. You can also mix and match your gear's appearance, so you don't have to choose between stats or style. Now, even though Where Winds Meet does look like a premium single-player title, it's actually a free-to-play game, and that naturally raises questions about monetization. During the beta, we did have access to the full in-game store, but since it was a test environment, we didn't have full access to the currency system. We were given a limited amount to experiment with, which gave us a feel of how things might work in the live version. The store itself includes a lot of cosmetic outfits, a battle pass, and a Genshin-style pool system for cosmetics. One thing that stood out is how rewards worked in the online mode, specifically in the joint stripes. After you finish a run, you would come across a chest containing high-level loot, but opening these chests required a special resource. This resource can be earned through gameplay and just refreshes over time, kind of like energy, but the fact that you can pull an item in the store that refreshes this instantly does raise a few flags. It is unclear if this is part of a wider energy or gating system, but it could limit how much loot you can grind without spending. So while the store wasn't aggressive in the beta and mostly had things like cosmetics, there are systems in place that could go either way. It all depends how generous the game is with its currency systems and how reliant future content becomes on these time-gated mechanics. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on this when the game goes live, but for now we don't feel knowledgeable enough about this particular system compared to other parts of the game to come to a real conclusion. It is something to keep an eye on. So after spending 40 hours in Where Winds Meet, it's clear that the game is doing something different. It blends single-player storytelling with co-op flexibility and MMO-style systems in a way that we don't usually see. And while everything hasn't landed perfectly, there is real ambition here and it's hard to ignore. The combat is deep and satisfying, the world is full of surprises, and there's a ton of content packed in even at this early stage. That said, it is a bit rough around the edges in places, with some animation issues, visual inconsistencies, and questions around the monetization that we'll need to keep an eye on post-launch. But overall, we have come away pretty impressed. Hopefully the team can tighten up some things and handle the monetization fairly, but Where Winds Meet clearly has a lot of potential to be something special. But let us know what you think. Are you planning to try it? And if you have already played the beta, drop your thoughts down below in the comments. Here at Arekkz Gaming, we're two friends who love to play games. You have me, Paradise, as well as 26.
Our goal is to keep the videos as concise as possible by cutting out any of the fluff and focusing on what really matters with high quality videos.
So make sure you're subscribed down below for more videos on your favorite games coming very, very soon.